Scientists just found lead in the teeth of a human who died 300,000 years ago. Not from pollution, not from industry, not from anything we built, from the Earth itself. And when they cross-referenced that data with brain development timelines across 3 million years of human evolution, they found something that nobody was ready to talk about. This is the story of how a deadly poison may have quietly shaped the species doing the thinking right now. Before we go further, you need to understand something about lead. Your body has no use for it. Zero. Unlike iron, calcium, or zinc, your biology has no receptor designed for lead, no system built to process it, no evolutionary mechanism to remove it safely. When lead enters the body, it doesn't pass through. It stays. It accumulates in bone, in tissue, in the developing brain. And it does something very specific to neurons. It mimics calcium, the molecule the brain uses to fire signals between cells and hijacks that process. Modern medicine calls this neurotoxicity, brain damage. But here's the question that a small group of researchers started asking quietly in labs in Germany, South Africa, and the United States. What if low-level chronic lead exposure, sustained across thousands of generations, didn't just damage brains? What if, under specific conditions, it changed them? In 2021, a team of researchers published findings from a study of ancient teeth, sourced from hominin fossils spanning 3 million years. Teeth are extraordinary time capsules. As they form in childhood, they trap chemical signatures from the environment, like rings inside a tree. Lead, calcium, strontium, all locked in enamel, preserved for millions of years. What they found stopped the team cold. Lead wasn't rare in ancient human teeth. It was consistent, across species, across continents, across millions of years. Neanderthal teeth from Spain, lead. Homo heidelbergensis remains from Germany, lead. Early Homo sapiens fossils from South Africa, lead. And here is what matters. The concentrations weren't random. They spiked during specific developmental windows, childhood, adolescence, exactly when the human brain undergoes its most critical periods of neural wiring. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't contamination from modern pollution. This was ancient earth, volcanic rock, soil, groundwater, leaching lead directly into the food and water of every hominin species that ever walked this planet. The question wasn't whether early humans were poisoned. The question was, what did 3 million years of that do to us? To understand what might have happened, you need to know how lead interacts with one specific protein in the brain, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of it as fertilizer for neurons. It tells brain cells to grow, branch, connect, and survive. High doses of lead crush BDNF production. That's the neurotoxicity we know. But here's what the research uncovered at low, chronic doses, the kind sustained across a lifetime, not a poisoning event. The brain adapts. It begins upregulating alternative calcium channels. It reorganizes synaptic architecture. In some documented cases in animal studies, it actually increases certain types of dendritic branching, the physical connections between brain cells, in regions associated with pattern recognition and spatial reasoning. This is not a clean story. Lead is still a poison. These adaptations come with costs: reduced processing speed, altered emotional regulation, increased impulsivity in some pathways. But over thousands of generations, with natural selection relentlessly filtering which traits survived, something may have been selected for. Not lead tolerance, something more subtle. A nervous system that, when exposed to low-level neurotoxic stress across development, rewires itself differently than one that was never challenged. Scientists have a name for this class of phenomenon: hormesis. The principle that a biological system exposed to a small dose of something harmful can respond by becoming more resilient, or in rare cases, more capable than it was before.
It is the same principle behind vaccines, behind cold exposure therapy, behind why muscles grow only after they are damaged. Stress that doesn't kill you sometimes makes the system stronger, or stranger, or both.
Now, here is where this story gets genuinely uncomfortable. Neanderthals were not the grunting primitives that textbooks invented for 100 years. They buried their dead with flowers. They made jewelry. They created pigment, possibly art. Their brains were, on average, larger than ours. And their lead exposure, according to the dental record, was significantly higher than early Homo sapiens in the same era. Researchers studying Neanderthal teeth from El Cedrón Cave in Spain found lead spikes that corresponded precisely with European winters, when food was scarce and they were forced to rely on specific stored plants and contaminated water sources. The lead exposure was seasonal, predictable, chronic. And then, roughly 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals disappeared. The conventional explanation is that Homo sapiens outcompeted them. Better tools, better social networks, better language. But a minority of researchers now ask a different question. What if the lead did different things to different brains? What if Neanderthal neurological architecture, larger, differently organized than ours, responded to chronic lead exposure in a way that impaired the specific cognitive flexibility that complex social cooperation requires? While Homo sapiens, smaller-brained, more densely connected, adapted differently. This is not a settled argument. Most paleoanthropologists reject it. The fossil record is incomplete. The variables are impossible to isolate. But the question itself, once asked, is very hard to unask. Now consider what happened in the 20th century. In 1921, a chemist named Thomas Midgley Jr. added tetraethyl lead to gasoline to stop engines from knocking. He knew it was toxic. The workers in his own factory were going insane, hallucinating, seizing, dying. He called the plant the Looney Gas Building. For 50 years, every car on every road in America burned leaded gasoline and pumped lead particles directly into the air that children breathed. The blood lead levels of American children in 1970 were roughly 15 micrograms per deciliter. Today, the CDC considers anything above 3.5 dangerous. Researchers studying crime statistics, IQ data, and educational outcomes across the 20th century found something remarkable. The rise and fall of violent crime in America tracks the rise and fall of leaded gasoline with a 20-year lag. The exact time it takes for a child exposed to lead to reach adulthood. This is not a fringe theory. It has been replicated across 24 countries. It appeared in peer-reviewed journals. It was cited in policy decisions. Lead didn't just shape our ancient ancestors. It shaped the generation your parents grew up in. It shaped crime rates. It shaped classroom performance. It shaped presidents. And in Flint, Michigan, as recently as 2014, a city's water supply was switched to a cheaper source. The pipes weren't treated, and 100,000 people drank lead-contaminated water for 18 months before the government acknowledged it. The children who drank that water are between 10 and 15 years old right now. We know what lead does at that developmental window. We have 3 million years of data. So here is where we land. For 3 million years, lead was an invisible passenger in human evolution, shaping brains, filtering bloodlines, possibly separating species. Then we industrialized it. We put it in our gasoline, our paint, our water pipes, and distributed it at scale to every human being on the planet. And now we're debating whether children today are less focused, more impulsive, more anxious than any generation before them. Maybe that's phones. Maybe it's diet. Maybe it's the collapse of community. Or maybe we are still, right now, in 2025, living inside a lead experiment that started 3 million years ago and never actually ended. The difference is, this time, we're the ones running it. Drop one in the comments. Do you think the lead era permanently changed the human brain, or are we already recovering?